Evelyn Hart stood in her own living room and watched a stranger's briefcase open like a trap. The notary, Mr. Klein, lined up forms on the coffee table, tapping his pen to a crisp little beat. Across from her, Lauren's smile looked polished enough to cut glass. "Before we sign anything," Evelyn said, pleasant as sunshine over ice, "we'll take a quick detour to the police station. They're expecting the documents I sent last night." Lauren's fingers tightened around her teacup. For a heartbeat, the smile flickered, then returned brighter than ever. 2 days earlier, there had been flowers and bells and a cake tall enough to cast a shadow, Daniel's wedding day. At St. Bridget's, the same church where Evelyn had once promised forever to his father, she'd sat near the aisle and told herself to breathe. Lauren was luminous in silk, luminous, and Evelyn hoped kind. She had wanted that so badly it hurt. The reception at the Oaks Country Club smelled of rosemary and wine. Evelyn had paid for more of it than she'd admitted to anyone. $15,000 scraped together from Social Security and decades of thrift bus passes, instead of taxis, shoes repaired, instead of replaced oatmeal from the generic bin. She told herself it was an investment in Daniel's start, a bridge into his new life. At a table of acquaintances, Lauren lifted her glass. "Evelyn has been staying with us for a while," she said, syrup pooling under each word. "She's such a help. And she was generous with our down payment." A few polite nods. The glances that followed were the kind people traded over a closed casket. Soft, sorry, speculative. A woman past her prime, they read, clinging to relevance. Evelyn kept quiet. She did not explain how 3 months earlier Lauren had cried at the little walk-up apartment with the tilting radiator and the 9 stairs that squealed like mice. "What if you fall?" she'd whispered to Daniel. "What if no one finds her until morning?" They had called it temporary until a safer place appeared. The down payment had been called a loan. Somewhere along the way, temporary turned permanent, and loan frayed into gift. Later during toasts, Daniel thanked everyone in a voice that still carried a boy's eagerness to please. "And my mom," he added, turning to her with that familiar, nervous half-smile. "Always there." Then Lauren rose. The room hushed the way rooms do when beauty stands. "I've learned so much about loyalty from Evelyn," she said. "Some mothers pull back when their sons marry. Not Evelyn. She keeps giving time money care." Laughter. No. Something tighter, like a seam pulled too far. Evelyn felt the fabric of the moment shift the public stitching of a story she hadn't consented to, where she was a fixture and a funding source. The morning after Evelyn entered their kitchen to find Mr. Klein's briefcase already open and Lauren pouring coffee as if this were a brunch and not a boundary violation. Paper rustled, signatures waited. "Ms. Hart." Mr. Klein began, voice kindly. "Hands efficient. Daniel and Lauren want to ensure your needs are met. We've reserved a place for you at Maple Grove Residence, 24-hour staff activities, a library. Lovely reviews." Evelyn set down her mug. "And my home. Refinancing will be simpler if the title reflects the 2 of them alone," Lauren said, immaculate. "Clean paperwork." "And the $15,000, Evelyn asked, keeping her tone mild. "Loaned for the down payment, with repayment terms." Lauren did not blink. "A wedding gift," she said with the frankness of someone practiced at renaming things. "You want Daniel to be happy." Evelyn looked at Mr. Klein. "What specifically today's signatures do." He cleared his throat. "You'd relinquish your interest in the property. In exchange, Maple Grove costs are covered for the first year." 1 year, Evelyn repeated. A year to make a person disappear into polite corridors. "Where's Daniel?" "At the gym," Lauren said lightly. "Numbers stress him out. I told him I'd handle it." That was an old pattern, with Daniel sending others into rooms he could not bear to enter. When bills came due, he arrived late or not at all. Evelyn lifted the top page, read 2 lines, and saw the future they were drafting. No title, a residence. She had not chosen a narrative she had not agreed to inhabit. She replaced the page. No, she said. Lauren smiled wider. We don't have to call it assisted living, if that's hard to hear. Think of it as community. I'll think of it as removal, Evelyn replied. And I'll think about it on my own timeline. Mr. Klein's pen paused mid-tap. Ms. Hart, of course you can take time. But our office has been told I'm forgetful, Evelyn asked softly. Incautious near stoves, confused about dates. 3 small, tidy accusations she'd been hearing for weeks, like gnats trained to fly in formation. Evelyn Lauren said, gentling her voice, We want you safe. You've mislaid things. You lose track. It happens. Maple Grove takes the worry away. I have lived with worry long enough to know its shape, Evelyn said. The kitchen smelled of lemon cleaner and expectation. Through the window, the small patch of grass she'd reseeded last fall glowed bright as a promise. I'm not signing anything today. A beat of silence. The notary looked at his watch. Outside, a delivery truck sighed to a stop. A dog barked twice and gave up. Then let's at least review, Lauren pressed words, smooth as ice over a river. It's in everyone's best interest to finish this while Mr. Klein is here. It may be in yours, Evelyn said, but mine requires advice. She smiled, a small, old-fashioned thing. All cheekbones and control, and a short visit to people who care very much about signatures obtained under pressure. Mr. Klein blinked. Police. Evelyn tilted her head. Elder Protection Unit. I sent them an email last night. They asked me to bring the originals. Lauren's cup rattled against its saucer. You're being dramatic. I'm being exact. Evelyn rose, palms flat on the table as if it were a lectern. You moved me out of my apartment for safety. You renamed a loan. You scheduled a residency. You chose a morning when my son would be elsewhere. And now you want a pen to finish the job. Color touched Lauren's cheeks. Daniel loves you. He's trying to do what's best. Daniel avoids fires by letting other people burn their hands, Evelyn said gently. He always has. She straightened. This is what will happen. I'll consult counsel. I'll get my own copies. And if we talk again, it will be with clear terms, not euphemisms. Ms. Hart, the notary, offered almost apologetic, we can reschedule. We can, Evelyn replied. But Mr. Klein, please leave your card. Should your firm wish to clarify its role in this, the detectives I mentioned will enjoy the introduction. When they left, briefcase clasped. Smile cracking, Evelyn stood alone in her living room. The walls she had painted, the sofa she had chosen, the small blue bowl of keys that had moved with her through 5 addresses. Each thing looked back at her patient. She did the practical next thing. She opened the hall closet, reached past the winter scarves, and pulled down her own file box. Paper sighed as it shifted, deed copies, bank statements, the loan note tabs in calm colors. She laid them out one by one until the pattern became a map. Temporary, she whispered, as if testing a word in a foreign tongue. Then she closed the box, set it by the door, and began writing down what would happen next. It would not be fast, it would not be pretty, but it would be hers. That night, after the papers went unsigned and the smiles hardened, Evelyn Hart waited until the house settled. Pipes clicked. A neighbor's porch light blinked out. In the hallway, the linen cabinet held towels, and behind them, the metal strongbox Lauren had insisted on keeping safe in a central place. Evelyn had the key. She'd just been discouraged from fussing with documents. She set the box on her bed and opened it. Inside tax folders, warranties, and what she was really after. She laid items in a row the way a seamstress pins cloth before the first cut. First, a loan note. $15,000 to Daniel Hart and Lauren Reed, expressly marked for the down payment with repayment due in 24 months. The ink was calm and unequivocal. Second, a recorded deed naming Daniel and Evelyn as joint tenants. No transfer, no quitclaim, no erasure of her share. Third, a power of attorney. Daniel had asked her to sign 6 months earlier in case something happens. The version in Evelyn's hands included the clause her attorney had added the POA activated only if 2 independent physicians certified she lacked decisional capacity. She touched the margin where her lawyer's initials appeared. Belt and suspenders. On purpose. A phone buzzed. "Daniel, sorry I missed the meeting. How did it go?" Evelyn read the screen a moment longer than necessary. "We'll discuss in person," she typed. "Can't tonight. Crashing at Nate's post-wedding chaos." "Lauren will fill me in." Of course she would. Delegation disguised as avoidance. It was a skill Daniel had polished since adolescence. Evelyn pulled a small notebook from the bedside table. She had started it as a kindness to herself, a way to anchor details when other people's versions grew loud. She flipped to March. 3:15. Toast for breakfast, toaster used, no burners turned on. Lauren later told planner, E left stove on. Not true. 3:22. Lauren tells D, I forgot dinner. She canceled that morning by text. 4:03. I asked her to speak up. She was whispering. She repeats later that I couldn't follow conversation. 4:18. Asked if Tuesday or Wednesday had the flu. Neighbor told it as E keeps losing days. No single entry was dramatic. Together they drew a shape, a gentle, persistent tilt in the story of Evelyn nudging her toward incompetence. In the kitchen, she made tea and stared at the quiet machines of her life. The kettle that clicked off when finished, the refrigerator that hummed the oven with the off light glowing red like a sentry. Nothing here forgot anything. She took her files to the dining table and created headers from sticky notes. Money Title Authority Timeline. Under authority, she wrote in block letters. POA dormant unless 2 doctors. Under timeline, she added tomorrow's task list. Call Dr. Lila Chen for a same-day cognitive evaluation. Email the county recorder for a certified copy of the deed. Print bank image of the original $15,000 transfer. Contact the Elder Protection Unit for guidance. Make clean copies, keep originals separate. Sleep arrived in short, practical pieces. Evelyn woke early and cooked. Blueberries bled into batter, the kitchen filled with sugar and something like memory. When Lauren came in, silk robe hair pinned immaculate even at dawn, she paused. You didn't have to do that. I wanted pancakes, Evelyn said, plating 3. We should talk. Lauren took a seat, knife and fork aligned like a ruler. Of course. I've been thinking about yesterday. Evelyn kept her voice conversational, the way one discusses weather systems. If the concern is truly safety, there's an obvious compromise. Lauren's smile reappeared professional precise. I'm listening. I consider a move to a senior community on my timetable, Evelyn said, and the house deed remains as is until my loan is repaid. Daniel and I keep joint title as security. After repayment, we can revisit. The smile thinned. That defeats the purpose of simplifying the refinance. It defeats the purpose of simplifying me out of the equation, Evelyn replied. Evelyn Loren began switching to a register that paired concern with condescension. You're almost 70. We have to be proactive. You've been misplacing things. There was the stove, the toaster, Evelyn said. I wrote it down. She placed the notebook on the table and opened it to the neat dated entries. Here are 4 examples where your retelling differs from events. Small, but consistently in the same direction. Lauren didn't touch the notebook. You're cherry-picking. I'm pattern recognizing. Evelyn took a breath. Name 1 concrete event that required assisted living. It's not about a single event, Lauren said, irritation frosting the edges of her voice. It's about overall vulnerability. And yet the overall solution you propose coincidentally gifts you clear title and my removal from daily decisions. Evelyn let that hang in the steam from the pancakes. Daniel is worried, Lauren said. He lies awake thinking about you falling and no one finding you. Then he can buy me a fall alert, Evelyn said. Not a one-way ticket. A muscle in Lauren's cheek jumped. We're trying to help. Help, Evelyn said, looks like options. This looks like pressure. For a moment, the kitchen held nothing but fork on china sounds. Then Lauren leaned forward. At some point, you have to accept the reality of aging. I accept it daily, Evelyn said. I just don't accept your version of it. Lauren pushed back her chair. Mr. Klein can come this afternoon. We can finalize. I'll be here, Evelyn said. So will my documents. She spent the rest of the morning in motion. At 9:10, Dr. Chen's receptionist squeezed her in. The evaluation was unglamorous. Orientation questions, memory tasks, serial sevens. The sort of work that evaluates attention more than personality. Dr. Chen, who had known Evelyn through knee pain and grief and flu seasons, asked harder questions too about mood, stress, sleep. Your scores are excellent, Dr. Chen said, finally typing the letter while Evelyn waited. I'll note there's no evidence of cognitive impairment and that you're fully capable of managing your affairs. Please date and sign, Evelyn said. She did not apologize for the request. Back home, Evelyn scanned and printed. She labeled folders with tabs she could see from across the room. She emailed the recorder's office, called the bank, and walked out with a printout of the original transfer memo down payment loan. She added it to money. She forwarded a summary to the Elder Protection Unit dates, names, descriptions, kept factual adjectives removed. Within an hour, a detective replied with practical instructions: keep originals, avoid signing under pressure, collect witness names, document conversations when lawful. Evelyn took a small digital recorder from a drawer. She tested it, played her own voice back, and did not flinch at the age in it. She placed the recorder beside the stack of folders on the coffee table and tidied the room as if expecting guests who cared about evidence. Her phone chimed. Lauren, Mr. Klein, at 1:45 works. Please be reasonable, Evelyn. This is for your good. Evelyn typed a single response, I'll be present and prepared. She set out glasses and water. She placed the loan note on top, not as a flourish, but as a reminder that words mean what they say until someone edits them. On a yellow pad, she wrote a sentence she intended to repeat. I am not refusing safety. I am refusing coercion. Before lunch, she opened the notebook again and added 2 lines. Today, Dr. Chen letter recapacity signed and dated. Today, EPU emailed. Advised to preserve originals, no signing under pressure. Then she turned to a clean page and drew 2 boxes. What I control and what I document. Under the first, she listed whether she signed where she lived, who she called. Under the second, every promise made to her in passive voice. At 1:10, she brewed coffee not for herself, but for the ritual of it, aroma, warmth, something ordinary to steady a day that had tilted. She looked around the room. Nothing had changed, and everything had. The sofa she'd chosen, the fence she'd repaired, the herb pots she'd coaxed back after a frost. No item could prove ownership, but together they testified to presence. The front gate clicked. A car door thudded. In the entryway mirror, Evelyn smoothed her hair and saw not a victim or a supplicant, but a woman who had set her own table. She pressed the recorder's button, its small red eye winking on, and took her seat. Whatever happened next would be recorded, labeled, and answered. It would not be fast, it would not be pretty, but it would be hers. By the time Mr. Klein returned at 1:45 p.m., the living room looked like a small courtroom. Evelyn Hart had cleared the coffee table, lined up 4 labeled folders, and set a digital recorder beside a glass of water. Sun striped the rug. The house held its breath. Lauren breezed in with 2 cups on a tray. Let's get this wrapped, shall we? She said, as if the day were a manicure appointment. Mr. Klein set his briefcase down and produced the same stack of forms he'd carried before. Ms. Hart. He began as we discussed today's documents. We didn't discuss, Evelyn said evenly. You and Lauren discussed. I'm just the signature you came to fetch. A fractional pause. Mr. Klein adjusted his tie. Then perhaps we can review the terms again. We can, Evelyn said, opening folder 1. A clipped tab read loan note. She slid a copy toward him. $15,000 to Daniel Hart and Lauren Reed for a down payment. Repayment within 24 months. Witnessed and notarized. She looked at Mr. Klein. Not by you. His eyes scanned the notarization block. No, not by me. Folder 2. Evelyn continued flipping the tabbed stack. Title/deed, recorded 6 months ago. Owners of record Daniel Hart and Evelyn Hart, joint tenancy. I see no recorded transfer, no quitclaim from me. Yet your paperwork assumes my interest has somehow evaporated. Lauren's smile tightened. We're trying to simplify the refinance, Evelyn. Clean paperwork, clean theft, Evelyn said mildly, and opened folder 3. POA conditional. Daniel asked me to sign a power of attorney in case of emergency. I agreed with a clause it activates only if 2 independent physicians certify I lack decisional capacity. Mr. Klein's pen stopped tapping. Evelyn slid out a fresh sheet from folder 4. Medical letter. Yesterday at 3:10 p.m., I saw my primary doctor of 11 years, Dr. Lila Chen. This letter confirms I'm cognitively intact and fully competent to manage my affairs. She placed it on top of the stack, so the POA remains dormant. Lauren's tone cooled. Evelyn, no one is questioning your abilities. We're just worrying about your safety. You've been misplacing things. The stove, the toaster, Evelyn corrected. 2 Fridays ago, I made toast. You told the wedding planner I'd left a burner on. I keep a log when people misremember on my behalf. She touched the digital recorder. And today, we'll keep a record. Lauren set down the tray. Porcelain rattled. Fine, she said. If you need evidence, let's talk evidence. I found prescription pills in your handbag, Evelyn. Xanax, not prescribed to you. Evelyn held her gaze. You mean the bottle labeled Rosa Alvarez? Rose asked me to pick it up on my way home last week when her shift ran late. She moved to Phoenix 3 days later and forgot. I planned to mail it to her, then thought better of mailing controlled substances. So yesterday, I turned it over to Officer Patel at the precinct. She lifted a small receipt. Property voucher number, date time, chain of custody. For a moment, Lauren's face went slack like a mask that hadn't finished drying. You are unbelievable. I prefer thorough, Evelyn said. Also, I spoke with the Elder Protection Unit. I described an ongoing pattern, coercion, misrepresentation, and attempts to separate a 68-year-old from her assets. They advised me to preserve originals, not to sign under pressure, and to gather witness information. Which brings us to you, Mr. Klein. He swallowed. Me. In my experience, people who organize signatures without speaking to the person whose rights are at stake sometimes misunderstand their exposure, Evelyn said gently. Knowingly participating in the financial exploitation of an older adult can make you an accessory. I suggest you review your firm's liability coverage. Color crept into his cheeks. He began to slide the unsigned forms back into his folder. Ms. Hart, I'll need to confer with my supervisor. You do that, Evelyn said. Leave your card. Lauren regrouped quickly, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle from her blouse. Look at what you're doing to Daniel, she said, voice hushed intimate. He's exhausted. The mortgage, the wedding bills, the baby, he can't carry everything. We are trying to create stability for everyone, including you. Evelyn lifted the last tab. Emails. She fanned out printouts, subject lines, timestamps. Terse exchanges. We need to accelerate the Evelyn situation. She's asking about the loan. Push the Maple Grove move while she's distracted with wedding. If she resists, we can raise competency concerns. Stability, Evelyn echoed. Interesting word for whatever this is. Lauren's jaw flexed. You read our private messages. You rifled through my private life, Evelyn said. The difference is what I did was legal. Mr. Klein cleared his throat, set a business card on the table, and retreated toward the doorway. "I'll excuse myself." "Please do," Evelyn said without looking up. The door closed. Silence pressed in a deep domestic quiet, broken by the backyard wind chime. Lauren stared at the folders as if they were live wires. "What do you want?" she asked finally. Brittle with calculation. "You keep saying no, but to what?" "Yes." Evelyn considered and decided to be explicit. "Repayment of the loan with interest. Removal of my name from the title only after repayment clears. And a written acknowledgement that you attempted to induce me to sign away rights under false pretenses." Lauren laughed once, a sharp sound that didn't reach her eyes. "We don't have $15,000. "Then you'll need to adjust your lifestyle," Evelyn said mildly. "Sell the dining set you bought last month. Cancel the Napa weekend. Daniel can take freelance shifts again." "Daniel is my husband," Lauren snapped. "Our decisions are ours. And my money was mine," Evelyn said. "We're both revising our pronouns today." Keys turned in the front lock. Daniel stepped in hair damp from a shower gym bag slung on his shoulder. He froze at the sight of the folders, the recorder, the emptiness of the notary's chair. "What's happening?" he asked. "What's happening," Evelyn said, "is a grown woman telling the truth in her own living room." Lauren was first to pivot. "Your mother threatened Mr. Klein with the police. She's making wild accusations." "I presented documents," Evelyn said, "and a boundary." Daniel looked from one to the other, color draining from his face. "Mom, can we talk privately?" "We can talk here," Evelyn said. "Transparency would be novel." He swallowed. "This is getting out of hand. Lauren is pregnant. We're overwhelmed. We thought Maple Grove would help." "You thought Maple Grove would remove me from your ledger," Evelyn said. "Here are my terms." She repeated them, calm as a grocery list. "If you cannot repay in 30 days, we'll proceed through the courts." Daniel sank onto the arm of a chair. 30 days. "We don't have that kind of money." "You had that kind of boldness when you asked for it in the first place." Evelyn said not unkindly, "I raised you to face the cost of your choices." Lauren laid a hand on Daniel's arm, stage managing the angle of her concern. "She's punishing us." "I'm protecting myself," Evelyn said. Two different verbs. Daniel scrubbed a hand over his face. "Mom, I'm asking for just time. We can figure out a plan." "You had months," Evelyn said softly. "You spent them on silence." He flinched. "I didn't know how to navigate between you." "That is also a choice," Evelyn said. Lauren exhaled through her nose, calculation back on her tongue. "If you go to the police, we'll petition for guardianship, Evelyn, for your own protection." "You'll need evidence," Evelyn said, tapping the medical letter. "Not scripts." No one spoke. Finally, Daniel said small and flat, "What are you going to do now?" Evelyn rose and closed each folder, stacking them neatly. "First, I'm moving out tomorrow." She nodded toward the hallway where 2 suitcases leaned ready. "I signed a short-term lease across town." "Second, I'm meeting an attorney at 9 a.m. "Third, I'm calling someone who deserves to know what's happening." Who Lauren's voice was wary. "Your mother," Evelyn said. Marianne Cole answered on the second ring, voice crisp, curious, guarded. An hour later, she sat on Evelyn's sofa, hands folded on a leather handbag that looked older than fashion and too well cared for to be anything but loved. She took in the neat stacks, the recorder, the way Lauren's name appeared in bold on several pages. "I'm not here to defend my daughter," Marianne said, preempting the usual dance. "I'm here to listen," Evelyn told her. "Not every cut, not every indignity, but the pattern, the renaming of a loan. The campaign of, 'You're forgetful,' whispers the prearranged residency, the email trail. The threat about pills, the doctor's letter, the notary, the 30-day line in the sand." When she finished, Marianne sat very still. Then she said with the flat grief of someone reciting whether there were incidents in college. A roommate's credit card, later a fiancé's elderly father. She framed it as helping, borrowing, smoothing. We threw money at the problem and called it growth. I told myself she'd changed. She met Evelyn's eyes. I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to be responsible for her, Evelyn said. I'm asking you not to be surprised by her. Marianne's mouth tilted. Fair. She touched the top folder. You're pressing charges. I'm preparing to, Evelyn said. I hoped Daniel would choose honor without handcuffs, but hope isn't a plan. Do you need a lawyer? Marianne asked. My late husband's firm kept a trust counsel I still use. She's meaner than a tax audit and smarter than grief. Evelyn surprised herself by smiling. Yes, please. Marianne inhaled as if turning a page. 2 things then. 1, I'll help you line up counsel. 2, I'll talk to Daniel. He's not malicious, just porous. He believes whatever hurts least in the moment. She hesitated. And if you do move forward with the police, I'll tell them what I know. It's time the pattern had daylight. Evelyn let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Thank you. Marianne stood, collected her bag, and paused at the door. You've been very alone in this, she said. You aren't now. When the latch clicked, the house felt different, lighter, as if someone had opened a window in a room Evelyn didn't know was stuffy. She moved through the quiet, touching the places she had contributed, the patched fence line she'd fixed last fall, the herb pots she'd coaxed back from frost, the dent in the hallway where Daniel had once bumped a laundry basket and laughed. She wasn't sentimental enough to mistake objects for belonging. She packed the last sweater, zipped the case, and set her alarm for the morning. On a yellow legal pad, she wrote 3 columns: what I can control, what I can't, what I won't tolerate. Under the 3rd, she wrote being rewritten out of my own life. When the phone vibrated near midnight, Daniel's name bloomed on the screen. Mom, he said, voice raw. Lauren says you're going to the police. I am, Evelyn said. A long inhale. I don't know who I married. You do now, she said gently. That's the beginning, not the end. What do I do? He whispered. You start by telling the truth, Evelyn said. Then you live with what that truth costs. He cried quietly. Evelyn let him the way she had when he was small, and the world scared him. Love didn't mean erasing consequences. It meant standing beside someone while they learned how to carry them. When the line went still, Evelyn set the phone down, turned off the lamp, and lay awake, eyes tracing the slow rotation of the ceiling fan. Tomorrow would be lawyers and keys and forms with her name on them as the person in charge of her own life. It would not be fast, it would not be pretty, but it would be hers. 3 weeks after the afternoon with folders and a blinking red recorder, Evelyn Hart turned the key to a modest 3rd-floor apartment that smelled faintly of lemon oil and sun-warmed curtains. The place faced a small park, the sort with a cracked basketball court and a line of jacarandas that purpled the sidewalks in the morning. Neighbors waved from doorways. In the laundry room, someone had labeled the detergent scoop, "Please return." The decency of small systems soothed her. She learned the rhythms quickly. On Tuesdays, Mr. Alvarez in 3B played boleros while he watered spider plants along the walkway. On Thursdays, the bridge group colonized a folding table in the community room and argued about doubles like senators. In a week, 2 women from down the hall knocked to ask whether she'd join the potluck. I make a spinach pie that forgives mistakes, the shorter one promised. Evelyn brought lemon bars and a story about a fence she'd patched last fall. Nobody asked her to sign anything. She did not hear from Daniel or from Lauren. Absence made a noise all its own, like the hush after a slammed door. Evelyn filled the space with errands that restored her edges. She set up utilities. In her name, transferred prescriptions, returned library books under her own card. At a thrift store on Grove, she found a little oak table that remembered hands. She carried it up the stairs in 2 trips, breathless and stubborn, and set it by the window. When light slid across its scarred top, it looked like a promise. The doorbell rang on a Saturday. In the peephole, a woman with a posture that had been taught, not assumed, and a plate under aluminum foil. When Evelyn opened the door, the woman held the plate like a peace offering. "Ms. Hart," she said, "I'm Marianne Cole." Her voice held tidy vowels and fatigue. "Lauren's mother." They sat at the new table. On the plate, shortbread uniform careful. Marianne did not touch one. "I owe you an apology," she said without preface, "for what you've endured, for not recognizing what was unfolding." Evelyn poured tea and waited. "When you called me," Marianne continued, "I wanted to believe you were mistaken. I have wanted to believe a lot of things about my daughter." She smoothed an invisible thread from her sleeve. "This is not the first time she's reframed other people's resources as solutions. In college, there was a roommate whose credit line became communal without consent. Years later, a fiancé's father. We told ourselves they were misunderstandings. We paid lawyers and whispered about growth." She lifted her eyes. "We did not insist on better." "I'm not asking you to carry her choices," Evelyn said, "just not to be surprised by them when they arrive on your porch." "Fair." Marianne reached into her handbag and set a thick envelope on the table. $15,000. I know it's not how justice should work, one mother compensating for another mother's loss, but I won't let you bankroll my daughter's appetite." Evelyn looked at the envelope as if it were a live thing. "Marianne," she began and stopped, pride and relief scrapped in her chest. "I documented the loan. I intend to pursue repayment, but I won't take more from you than your apology." "This isn't more," Marianne said. "It's exactly what was taken returned. You can let the courts do the rest." She slid the envelope closer. "And if you press charges, as I think you must tell the detectives, they may call me. I'll answer questions plainly." The decision had already been made in Evelyn's bones, but saying it out loud set it in place. "I will." Marianne nodded a small bow. "Then at least let me connect you with counsel. My late husband's firm retained a trust lawyer who is efficient and ferocious." "I'd appreciate that." The women sat in companionable quiet for a moment, the way strangers do when they've agreed to hold a hinge together until it sets. When Marianne left, Evelyn stood at the window and watched her cross the courtyard alone. The jacaranda shed 2 spent blossoms at her heels like a benediction. The detective called on Monday. "Ms. Hart." "Detective R. Patel, Elder Protection," the voice said. "Courteous practiced. I've read your summary and the attachments. Will you come in to file a formal complaint?" The words steadied her more than they shook her. "Yes," she said. "Today." At the station, paperwork had its own choreography intake, questions photocopying a measured inquiry into timelines. Evelyn placed her folders on the detective's desk like 4 small houses. She tried to keep adjectives out of her voice and dates in. When she finished, Patel leaned back in her chair. "We'll move on, the detective said. "For now, don't contact them directly about the allegations. If they contact you, keep records. If anyone shows up to help with paperwork, call us." "Understood." On Tuesday morning, while Lauren was smoothing a dress over her stomach and checking a calendar on her phone, 2 officers knocked on the Hart-Reed door. Evelyn learned how it went because Patel phoned later with a matter-of-fact update. She asked, "Is this because of Evelyn?" The detective said, professional voice edged with something like weary humor. That was her first sentence. Evelyn closed her eyes. It sounded like a thing Lauren would say, as if consequence were someone else's invention. And Daniel, shock, Patel said, then denial. Sometimes it's easier to accept a narrative of spite than a pattern of facts. After the call, Evelyn sat with her hands around an empty cup. She could almost see Daniel's face at 12, the quiver between truth and the version that cost less in the moment. Then and now, the problem with cheaper stories was the bill that arrived later. He phoned that afternoon. "Mom," he said the word frayed. "What is happening? Lauren says you're punishing us." "Justice isn't punishment," Evelyn said. "It's a line. She's pregnant," he said, as if that clarified everything. "She could go to jail." "Pregnancy doesn't launder theft," she replied, gentler than her words. "And I didn't put her anywhere." choices did. Silence. She heard him breathe, and the sound was a bridge to all the times she'd sat by his bed with a hand on his back while he cried about something that would not matter in 3 years, but mattered then enormously. He was 42 now. The shape of the hurt had changed. The care was the same. "I don't know who I married," he said finally. "Now you do," she said. "That's the worst part and the beginning." He didn't argue. She took that as a kind of consent to reality, at least. Investigations, it turns out, have their own tempo. Patel called again 2 weeks later. "Ms. Hart, we've identified prior complainants," she said. 2 older men who reported financial irregularities after brief relationships with Ms. Reed. Neither case moved forward at the time. "We're talking to them again." Evelyn stared at the sink where a single saucer waited for soap. She thought of how often a story becomes a pattern only when someone refuses to treat it as an isolated incident, how silence keeps company with repetition. There were meetings with a lawyer. Marianne had recommended Maya Temple small and brisk and unafraid of procedural thickets. There were letters drafted and redrafted phrases built to bear weight. There were nights in which Evelyn lay awake and reminded herself that courage and comfort are rarely co-signed on the same contract. On one of those nights, she wrote a list in the soft light from her phone. "What I can forgive fear, delay clumsy apologies, said wrong at first. What I cannot erasure dressed as care theft, called simplification, love used like a crowbar." The arraignment came fast. The plea came faster than anyone predicted. Lauren stood before a judge with her hair swept back and a gray cardigan that telegraphed humility. Her attorney said words like misunderstanding and pressure. The assistant DA said words like scheme and intent. The judge, a woman with a voice that had instructed entire rooms to sit down, listened and did not emote. "Ms. Reed," the judge said at last, "you did not trip into exploitation. You arranged it." She enumerated the counts and the conditions. 18 months in state custody, 3 years probation, restitution to the victim in full, a mandatory program on financial crimes against elders. The gavel did not bang. This was not a movie, but somebody near the back sniffed in a way that sounded like a door gently closing. Daniel sat 2 rows behind Evelyn. He did not try to take her hand, and she did not offer. Some distances are respectful. Outside, the sky was a pale, stretched blue. "How do you feel?" he asked, as if she were the one who had been judged. "Tired," she said. Then, after a beat, free enough to be tired. He nodded, jaw tight, eyes glassy. "She's asked me to wait, to stay married until she's out. What do you want?" He looked past her over her shoulder at nothing she could see. "To raise my child inside a house where the words mean what they say." "Then you already have your answer," she said. He filed for divorce a week later. Emma arrived in late spring, a small, serious person with hair like a storm cloud and long fingers that opened and closed as if testing the air. Daniel sent a photo from the hospital, no florid caption, just a name, Emma Evelyn Hart. Evelyn sat on her couch with the phone in her lap and let herself cry, the sort of tears that taste like everything at once. They arranged visits in a way that honored boundaries and need. The first time Daniel brought Emma to the apartment, he hovered like a man suddenly aware of gravity. Evelyn took the baby and marveled at the softness along the hairline, the determined frown of concentration, the quick suck, swallow, breathe of a newborn finishing a bottle. "She's perfect," she said, meaning, "Here is a life unbent so far. Let's keep it that way." They didn't talk about Lauren. They talked about nap schedules and percentage rates on savings accounts. Daniel told her he'd listed the house. "Too much debt, too many reminders," he said. "I can't carry both." "You don't have to explain it like a failure," she answered. "Sometimes leaving is the repair." When the sale closed, he came by with a cashier's check, shaking his head before she could speak. "This isn't charity," he said. "It's accountability. The loan, the interest," and he swallowed a little more, "because you taught me what more means." They moved him and Emma into a pint-sized bungalow 3 blocks from her building. The upholstery smelled like new beginnings and dust. He took a second job grading online coursework. He learned to pack a diaper bag with the urgency of a first responder. On Tuesdays and Fridays, he brought Emma to Evelyn's for dinner. They ate on the oak table. Afterward, the baby crawled toward the jacaranda shadows on the floor and squealed as if purple were a sound. Sometimes Marianne joined them. She arrived with casseroles that pledged stability and left with a kiss pressed to Emma's head that apologized for 1,000 things without naming any of them. Second chances, Evelyn thought, are not guarantees. They are agreements to try again. As summer warmed, Evelyn found a bench in the park that felt like hers. She started keeping a small notebook she'd someday give to Emma, a letter written slowly over many Tuesdays. In it, she explained that love is not the same as acquiescence, that I'm worried can be the glue between affection and control, that kindness without boundaries is how you disappear. She did not make a villain out of Lauren. She made a map. Here is how to recognize someone who will rename your no until it sounds like yes. Here is the difference between help and handling. Here is a list of doors you can close and still be good. Sometimes she wrote about joy instead, the way Emma's laugh started in her belly and worked up unstoppable. The way Daniel's face changed when he realized he could fix a leaky faucet on his own. The way the bridge ladies argued and then brought one another soup. 6 months after the sentencing, Emma took her first steps across Evelyn's living room, arms out, mouth open, in a determined O. 3 stagger steps and then a soft fall against Evelyn's shin. The room erupted. Daniel clapped. Marianne made a sound like a small trumpet, and Evelyn laughed so hard she had to sit down. "Look at her," Daniel said. "Half prayer, half brag. She's relentless. She belongs to relentless people," Evelyn replied, thinking of the women at her table and the women before them and the long line of repairs and refusals that had made this afternoon possible. When the baby slept in the portable crib by the window, Daniel poured tea and rested his elbows on the oak table. He looked older in a way that had nothing to do with years. "Mom," he said quietly, "I keep replaying everything. The wedding, the speeches, all the times I didn't ask a follow-up question because it was easier not to. You can't edit the past," she said. "You can revise the part of you that makes the next choice." "I thought loving someone meant making it painless for them," he said. "You've shown me that love can be the one who says, 'This is going to hurt now so it won't hurt worse later.'" Evelyn smiled into her cup. "I wish I'd learned that sooner too," she said. "Fortunately, you have a small person who will give you endless practice." The jacarandas dropped their purple confetti outside. A breeze nosed through the screen. The evening news muttered in a distant apartment about things Evelyn could not change. Inside the small economy of her life, balanced work, suit bills, forgiveness. Where it was prudent, firmness where it was necessary. She put a hand on the oak table, a hand with veins that had risen in recent years, like blue roads, and felt almost physically the click of something setting into place. She had navigated humiliation pressure, the flirtation of despair. She had made a paper trail sturdy enough to hold her life off the floor. She had endured the loneliness that attends a decision to be exact. And she had arrived at a late chapter in which her name sat in the subject line of her own sentences. It had not been fast, it had not been pretty, but it was hers. On a crisp afternoon in early fall, Evelyn walked past the courthouse on an errand and stopped to sit on the steps for a minute just because she could. People in suits swam up and down the stairs, faces lit by phones. A woman in a black jacket opened the heavy door for a man on crutches. A teenage boy ran ahead to press the elevator button with the solemn purpose of a knight. Evelyn thought of all the rooms inside where interpretations fought facts for custody of a circumstance. She thought of Detective Patel and Lawyer Temple and Judge Unimpressed and the cadre of clerks who had stamped her affidavits with tidy dates. She thought of Lauren and wondered, not with malice, but with a curiosity tired of disappointment, whether the state's rules and a set of skills sharpened the right way might yet sand down a habit of taking. Then she stood, adjusted her scarf, and walked toward home. In the evening, Daniel arrived carrying Emma and a bag of groceries. He moved around her kitchen with a familiarity that did not assume. "I'm making pasta with too much garlic," he announced. "Doctor's orders." "Which doctor prescribes?" that Evelyn asked, amused. "The new one," he said. "She's 6 months old and her name is Emma." They ate. They passed the baby between them and compared calendars for the week. At the door, Daniel hesitated. "I don't say it enough," he began. "You don't have to," she said. "I want to." He met her eyes. "Thank you for not surrendering what was yours." Evelyn considered deflecting with a joke and decided against it. "You're welcome," she said. "Now go before bedtime turns into mutiny." When the apartment was quiet again, she opened her notebook to write the day's page. "Dear Emma," she wrote, and then paused, listening to the small sounds of a building full of other lives, a laugh that ricocheted down the stairwell, water rushing through pipes, a radio playing something old-fashioned in a room that smelled of starch and courage. "Dear Emma," she wrote again, "today you walked toward me. I hope you always do, even if I'm the one holding the hard boundary in your way. I hope you keep what's yours and return what isn't, and live in rooms where the words mean themselves. If anyone ever tells you that safety requires vanishing, come sit by my window and we'll name the difference between shelter and control until it is too obvious to be argued." She closed the notebook, turned off the lamp, and let the dark find her in a place she had chosen. It had taken the better part of a year to remove a story she didn't write from the center of her life. The story she was writing now had ordinary scenes and good lighting and a table that remembered hands. That was enough. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.